Want to know why? Ask how.
Oi.
Howard, the humongous. Those oys are coming from Geo Geller. Oh, Geo. All right, here's the point. Ever since August of 2014, when Michael Brown was shot, this country has been in a ferment. It's been in a ferment for good reason. We've had people taken to the streets, probably by the hundreds of thousands. No one seems to have a precise count. For good reason. For a long time now, possibly going back as far as the emancipation of the slaves in the 1860s. Blacks have been treated like non-humans. Black men have been treated like non-humans by the police. Police have been slapping young black men up against cars, frisking them, making them part their legs, and sometimes brutalizing them, sometimes sodomizing them with brooms, sometimes beating them up, and sometimes shooting them. That has to stop. But there's a dark underside to this that the press isn't covering. Some people are trying to use this legitimate protest for disturbing ends. It looks like, for example, in New York City, when we had anti-Michael Brown and Eric Garner protests, there was a small group of people, roughly 30, although some newspapers counted it as high as 200, marching up 32nd Street between 5th Avenue and Madison Avenue, shouting, "What do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them now?" Now, Fox News, which had taken shots of one protest and phonied them up, faked them, so that it looked as if the crowds were calling for the death of cops when in fact that was false. Fox News was forced to apologize for doing that. Seized on the footage of these marchers and tried to make it look as if every marcher everywhere in the country that was disturbed by the Michael Brown and Eric Garner incidents, that was marching to say that Black Lives Matter, was calling for the death of cops. Fuck Fox News. They were wrong. And yet there was a group of agitators. It came from a group called the Trayvon Martin Organizing Committee of New York. And the Trayvon Martin Organizing Community of New York, in another protest, several of its members tried to throw a fully loaded trash can onto the head of a police officer on a level of the pedestrian walkway down below them. That can kill somebody. They were arrested. One of them is a Harvard-educated poet. Another one of them is a union organizer with a $100,000 a year job. It looks like these two are white people. There is a little group of agitators that still believes in an idea that should have died with the collapse of the Berlin Wall, that by bringing about a violent revolution, you can usher in a paradise. It did not work when it was tried in Russia in 1917. It did not work when it was tried in 1947 and 1948 in Mao's China. All that violence brought in was more violence, the death of 70 million people in Russia, the death of 70 million people in China. It doesn't work. People who try to bring in a paradise using violent revolution, people who try to instigate violent revolution, like the invisible organizers, people with no names of the Trayvon Martin Organizing Committee, are murderers. They are calling for mass murder. And there's another potential underlying factor behind some of the violence that happens on the edges of these protests. It's the Islamic factor. Islamia, or God, it's hard to keep his name straight, but Brinsley, Ismailia Brinsley, the man who shot 2 New York policemen a few weeks ago, was a Muslim. And according to several sources, including Jihad Watch, Walid Shubat, who unfortunately sometimes says things that are off the wall and crazy, not accurate. And one other source, Ismailia, who went under the name of Ismailia Abdullah Muhammad, is associated with a Muslim Brotherhood front group in the United States and didn't kill cops, just because he was crazy. That was part of it. Didn't kill cops just because he was desperately unhappy with his life, which is why he shot his girlfriend in the stomach in Baltimore before coming to New York to shoot the two cops. Yes, that was a part of it, but he was apparently motivated by jihad and the calls in the Quran to kill non-believers. He was apparently motivated by jihad. But again, because the sources are a little flimsy, we can't be sure. One way or the other, protest is how we handle problems we can't handle in any other way in America. Demonstrating that we can bring hundreds of thousands of people to the streets makes politicians pay attention to something they would otherwise ignore. Protest is one of the rights right up in front in our Bill of Rights. It's one of the most important things we have. Do not allow these crazies at the edge of society with their outrageous philosophies, disproven philosophies, that violence will usher in paradise. Do not let the jihadists, do not let the Marxists, Trotskyites, and Leninites spoil one of the most important things we've got. Do not let them kill in your name and mine. This is Howard the Humongous speaking to you from the future. It's your job and my job to make. And now, with a brand new camera, engineered so that you cannot possibly find the off button when you are sitting in front of the camera, we will make an attempt to find this brand new, chrome-plated, sleeky, sneezy little off button. Let's see if we've succeeded.